So Brandy, why don't you tell us why we're here and what we're doing? Give us maybe some of that context. And I know you were taking notes, so we can jump right in wherever you want to start.
Oh yeah. So I think it's helpful to just give a little bit of background about the work that I do and why I do it. So I started my life in corporate like a million years ago, working in a pretty fast pace. I was working in mortgage lending prior to the housing market collapsing, and it was a super intense environment. And we never really worried about how we were gonna say things. We never really worried about that because there was too much shit that needed to be done. And we didn't have time to mess around. When that kind of fell apart, I ended up going to work for a public school district, which in terms of culture and leadership was like a kick in the face. Because all of a sudden, what was acceptable in terms of how we talked to each other and the way that we communicated and the way we got things done was such a completely different experience. So it was communication by passive aggressiveness. So no one wanted to say the hard thing, like everybody wanted to have this sort of fake harmonious environment. Like, look at us, we're in this team meeting and we're all nodding our heads and isn't this great? And then everybody files out the door and finds each other at the water cooler and is trash talking what a shitty idea this is and how much, this person doesn't like this person and all of the things. And it was incredibly difficult to get the job done. And not only was it incredibly difficult to get the job done, it was really hard to navigate relationships and to be able to trust the people that you worked with. So I did some work with an employee assistance provider for a while. I did a lot of work with the management referral hotline. So I talked to leaders who were like, I'm not performing well, or my team's not performing well, and I don't know how to deal with this. So along all of these journeys, what I began to see was there was patterns. There was patterns in culture and systemic patterns. There were patterns in, even to this day, in my consulting capacity, I'll tell you guys, so much of what I hear when people call me is, hey, can you help us have a hard conversation? Hey, can you help us navigate conflict? And what it really comes down to, if we sort of unwind, it's not as simple as, let me just give you this tool and this magic wand. There's more to it than that. And largely the conversations either don't happen or they don't happen effectively because there's a lack of a relationship or there's a presence of fear or uncertainty. And so when I did Stop Being So Fucking Nice for Disrupt HR last year, and I did that as a response to years of sort of seeing the same types of trends. And what I heard from you all was really interesting because I heard a couple different themes. I heard what I lovingly and respectfully call the bull in the china shop, which is, that's me, which is I'm just gonna say the thing. And whatever the fallout is, like we'll figure that out as we go, but I just gotta say the thing. So that's one approach. There's also an approach of, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm gonna, Robin, I'm gonna stew about it and let it sit in my inbox, which I've been guilty of that myself. Or there's I'm gonna try and say the thing, but I'm gonna do it in such a way where maybe the message doesn't get conveyed because I do value that relationship. I wanna be liked. I don't wanna hurt any feelings. So I'm gonna be super soft in my approach and maybe not be as direct or come out and say the things, like making people guess, which is not helpful. So that's a little bit about what I do and how I started. Pathfinder Strategies was started 13 years ago. And the work we do is largely leadership development and team alignment. But this piece about relationship and communication is really at the crux. And Lauren, you talked about competence. This is a big piece of it as well. So that's kind of an overview.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us, when you say stop being so nice, why are we so nice? Why is that the pattern for some of us?
So if I had to like tell you sort of the three things I see the most, there's an absence of a relationship, which is a big one. And I'll give you a quick, easy example of this. I work with people a lot that will say, I'm too busy to have conversations with my team. I'm too like, Brandy, can't I just tell my team what to do and then just, come back a month later? I'm like, nope, you can't. I mean, you can do that, but it's not going to be helpful because you're not, first of all, in terms of performance, you're not building in these touch points and you're not building that relationship. And if you give me an assignment and then you disappear for a month, I don't feel that value. We're not having these touch points. We're not making sure everything's on track. And if there are questions, they're not being addressed. So that's not really an effective way to do it. And a lot of times, leaders will do that. They'll assign their team a task, and then they show up a month later, and the team already knows there's a problem, right? Because that's the only time that leader shows up, is when something has gone off the rails. So the leader comes in, and the team's like this. Nope, I don't want to, or they run the other way, don't make direct eye contact, that kind of stuff. So there's a relationship piece that comes into play. There may be some systemic or some cultural things at play. So the school district I mentioned, this was very much how they operated across the entire district, was if it looks like we're getting along, and if it looks like, we have decision making where everybody agrees on everything, then we're winning, which is BS, right? Where what's actually happening is you're missing out on opportunities to be creative, you're missing out on innovation, but the culture sort of dictates this is what it means to run a team. This is how we operate. So that's a piece. And then, Lauren, you kind of talked about this confidence piece. And it's actually courage and confidence. Maybe we don't have the tools. Maybe no one ever pulled us. Like, I don't know about you guys, but before my corporate life, and even well into my corporate life, nobody pulled me aside and said, "Okay, Brandy, there's going to be times in life where you're going to want to constructively push back or challenge, or you're going to need to say something that's divergent or not popular. Here's a good way to do that." Like, nobody taught me that. And I think a lot of us don't learn that skill. And so it doesn't feel easy, or we don't feel prepared when those moments arise.
I think it's funny how when we don't have a skill like that, we convince ourselves that it's something to do with us, right? Like, oh, I don't have that skill, so I suck. Instead of looking at it through the context you're saying, which is, I don't have that skill because I was never taught it,
right,
or I never learned it, right? So how do I go about getting that skill?
Right.
So, I mean, that's my question.
Yeah, okay, no, fair. So I think that we actually use a tool, and we teach this to our clients, because what that tool does is it forces touch points. It forces relationship building, so that when the time comes to have the conversations, you have this relationship capital from which to draw. You have some degree of comfort, because it's not just, the avoidance happens not just because it's lack of confidence or there's lack of confidence or courage. There may be a fear component or a comfort component, right? Like, we all want to be, the thing about us as adults is we all know that growth lives outside our comfort zone. We know that here, but here we're like, nope, I don't want to do that. That's going to be weird. And we tell ourselves it's going to be weird for us, or it's going to be weird for the other person. So I'm just going to avoid it. So anyway, getting back to your initial question, which was, you build these relationships, you develop the capital, and then you practice, right? Like, and people always roll their eyes at me when I talk about this, but I share this with especially like HR and senior leaders all the time. Like, bring people into your office and do a role play. Yeah. Because that's how we remember and learn things, is when we have a point of reference to tie back to.
And honestly, if you need somebody to do that, like role play, and you're not confident, it could be a team member or like, ask a friend. Yes. I mean, there are people in this room who will gladly do that with you, right? I think role playing is so undervalued because it helps you sort of workshop what you're trying to do. Like, hey, I have to have this conversation. Can I pretend to have it with you?
Yeah.
And can you tell me what you think,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
You know what you should have done. All right, so you've mentioned relationship capital, and I think I know what you're talking about. Let's talk about that. Can we talk about that a little bit more? Like, what are
Yeah.
we talking about when you say that? Like, if I have to have that conversation I don't want to have, or I have to say the thing that I don't want to say, I'm worried about saying, what is this relationship capital and what does it get me?
Yeah. Okay. So relationship capital that's just like the $10 way of saying you have a relationship with somebody. So if Stephanie and I are working together and maybe something's going off track and we're just not on the same page, because we have this relationship from working together and having touch points, and we've had coffee a bunch of times, there's a level of comfort in me just saying, hey, Stephanie, here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? It doesn't feel as scary because we know one another. We've talked about our significant others, and we've talked about Halloween, and we've talked about our work, and we've talked about these other things through the course of our relationship. This is not the second time this year that we're interacting, which is sometimes what happens.
So you were saying that, we have relationship, you have experience with one another, and you can lean on that, right? We need to have that hard conversation. And it made me think of something that we all have a tendency to say. So I want to ask your opinion on this. I think what we want to say, because we know we're about to say something difficult, is I would say to Stephanie, can I be honest with you? But that implies I haven't been honest the whole time, right? It's like, how do we do that, right? When you're going to lean on that capital and you're going to have to say something difficult, like tee me up. How do we get primed for that?
Yeah. So there's a couple things to keep in mind, and a few of you mentioned this as we were going around. We do a lot of work around communication styles and understanding the style and the needs of the people that you're working with. So, Robin, I'm sure that you've kind of figured this out through the course of your relationships. And I know, for example, the way that I might interact with Lauren isn't necessarily the way I might interact with Dave because we know each other a little bit. So it's helpful to know that. It's helpful to know, like, okay, well, this person is just going to tell it like it is. So maybe I have a little bit more permission to just sort of rush in and say the thing versus I probably wouldn't do that with Lauren. I probably would want to, and it's not good or bad, it just is. I would probably want to build in a little bit more like, hey, how's it going? How you doing? Catch me up. The other thing too is I'm a big believer in direct respect. So when you're going to have a conversation with someone, there can be this tendency to like, okay, let me fluff it up. Let me make sure everybody feels comfortable, and then I'm gonna smack them with it, right?
Yeah.
I think if you can just, hey, this is what I want to talk to you about, and you can even incorporate like questions. I'll go back to the example of me and Stephanie working together, right? So, hey, Stephanie, I want to have this conversation. What are you seeing? How are you experiencing this? And you can also start a conversation that way and sort of get that other person's insight.
I really like when, I don't like it when somebody emails you or texts you, hey, can we talk, right? Robin's laughing. It's classic middle school breakup, right?
Yes.
It's like, we know what's coming.
Right.
Instead, and this is some advice I've heard, it's, hey, we need to have a hard conversation, right? And now you just know, right? And I don't know that can work with everyone based on their communication style or whatever, but sometimes it's easier just to go, hey, we need to have a hard conversation. When are you available?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Direct respect.
Yeah.
100%. And it gives that other person the opportunity to prepare and focus, whatever they want to bring to the conversation.
Right, because what we end up doing, you get that message, hey, can we talk? You immediately go, well, what do you want to talk about? Right? We know, right? So if you just say, hey, we need to have a hard conversation, at least, I don't know what the topic is, but I know it's going to be maybe a tricky or difficult conversation. Yeah. So there's this idea that, again, some advice I heard, I think this one comes from Jefferson Fisher, which is going into conversations with, instead of like, what do I need to prove or what needs to happen versus what can I learn? Yes. So can we talk about that? Like, yeah, maybe Robin has something really difficult she needs to say, or we all have something that needs to be said. Is there a difference between going into that conversation with like, I have to prove where I'm coming from versus maybe I should try to learn where they're at before I right? Is that, let's talk, yeah, okay.
Oh
so
my gosh.
Write and then let's talk.
Yeah. So, okay. So if you go into, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff you already know. When you go into a conversation and your goal is to prove something, I have to prove I'm right. I have to prove that this is the project that needs the financial allocation, whatever that thing is, then immediately you're going in not prepared to listen. And you're going in with the need to be right. So you're not even really ready to engage in a conversation. What you want to do is you just want to say what you want to say. That is not the same as having a conversation. So if you come from the perspective of I need to learn, so this is what I was kind of alluding to when I was saying lead with questions. You know, when we coach managers on having just basic feedback conversations, what we coach is pepper in some questions like, hey, this is what I've been noticing. What are you experiencing? Catch me up. How are things on your side? What are you seeing? Because a lot of times you're opening up the conversation and you're going to hear stuff that you didn't know. You thought you knew, or an assumption had been made, but you didn't know.
Yeah, peppering in questions is, okay, I mean, but let's say, oh, go ahead. Well, so where's the not Mike? Yeah? Okay, excellent.
My question kind of goes along with that, where one of the skills that I've worked on over the years in a conversation, particularly when I'm engaged with an interlocutor that seems like hostile, you know, that like they need to prove that they're right or whatever, is going what I call Socratic. I will ask them a series of questions to bring them around to the viewpoint I want them to have.
Yes.
Right? And so what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's, I think anytime that you can get people asking questions is helpful. I think there's value in bringing them around to your perspective, but there's also value in hearing just what they have to say. Because so often, I think as humans, especially in the workplace, we're busy, we're running from thing to thing, and so often what we're looking for is value and validation. And when we ask people what their perspectives are, we're giving them the opportunity to share that, and we're saying, I care enough about you to listen. So I do think that is a good approach.
Yeah, because most people just want to be witnessed at the end of the day. They just want to be
I
acknowledged.
was going to say the same thing, and I think maybe Robin's going to experience this with the email is whether or not Robin can do anything about it or whether even it's a good idea. I think sometimes people just want to feel heard, right?
100%.
Yeah. Now, whether or not Robin listens is another thing, right? I mean, what I mean is like, is it something worth your attention, I guess is really what I'm getting at, right? But okay, so I like value and validation. Let's dig into that a little bit more. So we're being told, or not being told, but your suggestion is stop being so nice. But yet, what I hear you saying is, let's ask questions. Let's make people feel valued and give validation. How, like, that seems conflicting. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so I probably should have started with this. Clearly, I'm not telling people to go around and just be assholes to one another, right? Like, that's not my intention. The difference, well, let me ask you guys, what do you think the difference is between being nice and being kind?
I mean, I'd take a stab at it, but I'm happy to let somebody else jump in.
Being nice, it seems to me.
Wait, hold on. We got to get you the mic.
Where's the not Mike? We'll just call it Mike. You need Mike. Mike's your buddy.
Yeah, so thinking of, nice seems to me to be much more about me. How do I come across to someone else? So I want to appear nice. And so it's outwardly maybe that behavior, where being kind has the interest of the person I'm talking with in mind. So when I'm being kind, I may tell you feedback that will be hard to hear, but I'm doing it with the intent to help you. Whereas nice is more superficial. At least that's how I would think about it.
Yeah. Aziz.
Similar to what my other fellow said, I would say that being nice is offering the help to someone even if that person is not expecting you to engage in their personal or professional life.
Yeah.
But being kind is when they ask you for something and you directly tell them what it looks like.
Yeah.
That way you value yourself as well, and you give the opportunity for the another person to think about him or herself and seek the guidance or recommendation from you.
Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Thank you.
Back to the boss.
You can be nice and passive aggressive.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I tell this story, and if you guys are on my email list or if you've seen me present, you've probably heard it, so I apologize. But 1,000 years ago in my corporate life, I was at this super swanky dinner, elbow rubbing with all the executives, trying to like shamelessly advance my career, right? Like shaking hands and smiling and doing all this relationship building. And I leave this dinner and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Like, oh, I got to hang out with the CEO and I'm making this great impression. I get back to my hotel room and I go to brush my teeth and I have like spinach all up in my grill. So I went through the entire night schmoozing like this. And here's what I'm getting at. Not one person said anything to me for the entirety of that evening. So what happened was I did not experience kindness.
Everybody was just being nice. Yeah.
Yes, I experienced niceness. Because niceness is, and Lauren, you kind of hit on this, niceness is about me. It's about my comfort level, right? So everybody wanted to be nice. They didn't want to feel a moment of discomfort for themselves. So they were perfectly happy to let me suffer through an evening with food in my teeth.
Oh, she'll never know.
Right, like kindness is saying to somebody, hey, Brandy, pulling me aside, hey, Brandy, go help yourself, right? Or hey, your zipper's down or whatever. In the context of like a workplace conversation, kindness is saying the hard thing with the right intention, right? Like kindness is about, okay, this might be an awkward conversation, but we need it for the betterment of the growth of our company, or we need it for performance improvements or whatever. It's not like I just want to be a jerk to be a jerk. There's a good reason and intention behind that.
It's like, I think I don't know how many of you have been in this position, probably a lot of you, but it's letting somebody go. Mm-hmm. When you have to fire somebody or lay somebody off, whatever's going on, that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
That's a hard conversation. If it's because of underperformance or because there's something that they need to, you are being kind. I always say releasing them onto the next phase of their life. Yes. But you are being kind and you're giving them feedback. This isn't working out. Here's why it's not working out. Yep. We hope for the best for you. Mm-hmm. This place isn't it, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. I think that's a hard conversation that we're not always willing to admit. We can be kind in that and we can give feedback and move them on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know if anybody saw my LinkedIn post, but I was talking about a business and I gave one example, but this is actually an example I hear a lot. Where this business owner basically told me, he's like, Brandy, I'm fantasizing about this person on my team leaving.
You just posted about this, didn't you? Yeah, oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what? Why? And then he proceeded to tell me, this person is, and some of it was small and some of it was large, showing up late, not being within the dress code
Job 101
guidelines.
stuff.
Yeah, like basic stuff. And then when the employee was actually doing the job, she was half-assing it. Oof. So he's like, oh my gosh, this has been going on for months. And I said, well, why? Have you not had a conversation? And then he gave me all of these reasons and he said, well, we're getting ready to go into our busy season. I need a body, basically. I need someone to do the work. And then he gave me a couple other excuses like, well, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. I don't want to, kind of ruffle feathers. I'm just too nice. So he's telling me all of this. Meanwhile, here's this employee who's out in the community, not representing the brand, not representing the company accurately, and probably doesn't know. I'm sure this employee is not ill-intentioned, but there's no feedback given.
I mean, work ethic is not created equally. And so what seems like 100% to somebody, to me, might look like 50%. Right? Mm-hmm. I have found, and this is because it happened to me, I have found that goes back to some advice you gave earlier about asking questions. So I was in this role, it was a sales job. I hated it. I was not happy there. I ended up having like my best month I'd ever had. I missed one metric by like $500 or something. My bosses, the local sales manager, the general sales manager called me into the office, and their first question was, we don't think you're very happy here. And I said, you know what, I'm not, and I'm happy to have this my last day. And I left.
Wow.
And I've learned in that sometimes, like you said, just feeling out where are they at? Like, how do you think this is going?
Right.
And they might go, I think it's going poorly and I would love to be done, right? Like they don't know how to quit either, right? Sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's asking that question in the lead into that potentially really hard conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much to be said about like calling out the elephant in the room, because this often doesn't happen, right? Is there's a pending thing in the room. There's, I don't know, a big project or poor performance or budget cuts or something, and then by not talking about that, it's not helping anybody, and it's actually stressing people out more. And of course, it's such a cliche but true. Like when we don't know stuff, what do?
Yeah.
We make shit up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Angie.
Thank you. Sorry. I didn't
No,
want
it's
to cut
okay.
you off. So your comment about like we're not all created equal like this, and I think we're more aware than ever that everyone is wired so totally differently. I would say that I have a medium to high EQ because my trauma, right? I was highly attuned, right? And I can usually read people. But what would you suggest for people that like, when you want to know where your social capital is with someone, where your relationship capital is with someone? I personally did a lot of Enneagram work, and I found that incredibly helpful because you're identifying people's motivations.
Yeah.
I'm a 1, so I need to be right with myself at the end of the day, which is what motivates a lot of my hard conversations, right? Like, I can't exist if things are not right,
Yes. Yeah.
My friends that are an 8 and a challenger, I have no problem going like, boom, here's the thing. They love that and respect that.
Yeah.
That's been a really good tool for me.
Right.
What would you recommend for people that maybe don't have that high attention? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like we are all made so differently.
Yes.
What would you recommend to build that understanding of where other people are coming from and where you stand with them?
Oh, I love this question. So there's a couple things. We use the DISC assessment a lot, which is pretty, I see a lot of you nodding your heads because it's very basic and it's very easy and it's all behavioral. So that's a really helpful, it's not the end all and be all, right? Like no assessment is, but it's a great guiding set of principles. I think if we pay attention, we can learn a lot. And what I mean by that is if you're working with somebody and they're asking you a lot of questions, and maybe it annoys you, but there's a reason that they're asking a lot of questions because they need information. And so if we pay attention to kind of how people are interacting with us, people are telling us all the time in not obvious ways what they need and what's important to them. And if we can pay attention to that and be intentional, that's helpful. So I already know that this person's going to ask me a lot of questions, and even though maybe that's not how I like to operate, that's important to them. So I know I need to make sure and give them as much data as I possibly can in our interaction.
And just even having that little pep talk with yourself, right, can really go a long way. I think you're absolutely right. If you know someone is going to ask questions, one, trying to go, where are they coming from? They need information, or they trust me, right? So they're asking that questions. I have to play this game a lot with my kids where they make messes around the house. And the trick my wife and I do, and we learned this from somebody else, is to go, look, they're showing me how much they love me. They didn't flush the toilet. Look, they're just reminding me that they love me. And I know that they're going to leave disaster behind.
Yes.
And if you can prep yourself, you're probably going to be that much more prepared for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned something about discomfort, right? And that there's going to be a certain level of discomfort with this. That when I go to have the hard conversation, whether I practice all your stuff, I've done the disc, I know what they're at, I know where I'm at, it's still going to be some level of uncomfortable. Short of practicing it, what do we do? Like, how do we manage that, especially if I'm averse to it?
Yeah. Sorry to sound snarky, but you have to do it. You have to do it. And there's a level of commitment, right? So if you say to me, if Dave says to me, hey, Brandy, I really want to be a better communicator, I want to be a better leader, the first thing I'm going to ask about is commitment. Because it's really easy to say, here's where I am, here's where I want to be. But to do the work that's in the middle, That's the hard part. And that's the part that requires you to step into that discomfort. So I wish I could give you a magic wand, like, hey, take this pill, or hey, do this thing, and all of a sudden you're gonna feel comfortable. You're not, because that comfort comes from doing it more, from being committed, having the courage to have that conversation. And then the more you do that, the more practiced you are and the more confident you become.
I feel like you should not only be doing the work you're doing, but maybe also start hosting like improv classes, because improv is probably the most awkward and discomfort, like not just for the audience. I think it could be, so, I mean, what a better way to practice this, right? Is like to put yourself in situations where you know you're gonna be uncomfortable.
Yeah, 100%.
What, how?
You know what you should do. Good call out. Good call out.
Would you like some feedback? How about that? I'll rephrase it. Oh, I did that. Thank you, Will, for pointing that out. I thought I had emotional intelligence. You mentioned EQ, EI, and you Enneagram. Like I don't know mine, but so many people in my life love it. I feel like I need to just do it, so I go, okay, I get the point of reference, right? Yeah. But let's talk about emotional intelligence. I think, again, we're probably more aware of it than we've ever been, right? To your point, but maybe we don't always know, one, how do I do an honest self-assessment, right? How am I truly honest with where I'm at with my emotional intelligence? Yep. And then two, how do I sharpen that skill?
Yeah. Okay, shameless plug.
I love it. That's what we're here for.
I run an emotional intelligence assessment. Ooh. So if that's something that you're interested in, give me a call and we'll talk about it. And it's really helpful because, yes, I think as a society we are more self-aware, some of us, and some of us not, or some of us think we're self-aware and we're really not.
I think that one's really dangerous.
That's
but
very
that's a different
dangerous.
conversation.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, and I think too, especially if you're in a leadership position, to ask for that feedback. Hey, I used to have this manager, Ryan, and he was amazing at this. And he was always asking us for feedback. And at first we all thought it was weird because we had never worked with anybody that did that.
Sure.
But he would ask us for feedback like, hey, how do you think I did in that meeting? Is there something you think I could have done better? How do you think I was on that call? Hey, you saw the way that I managed this. What did you think about that? It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And even leaders that are working with us in a coaching capacity, one of the things we advise them to do is tell your team you're going through coaching and then ask them for feedback.
Oh, we're so afraid to do that kind of, it's like therapy. Like, oh, I don't want to talk about I'm in therapy, but like tell people.
Yes.
Share that experience.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win-win-win-win because what it does is it helps you get the feedback that you're asking for, right?
Right.
You're showing yourself as a human. You're showing yourself as hopefully more authentic. You're saying, I want to get better. And you're saying, I value you enough to ask for your feedback and then hopefully take action on that.
So Adam Grant, if you're not familiar, his LinkedIn posts are amazing. Yeah. But Adam Grant does this when he does a speaking engagement, especially when he's been paid. I guess he goes at the end and he'll say, hey, how did that go? What do you think I could do better? And he will not let them off the hook until they give him at least one thing that he can work on better because he really wants to keep improving. And again, that goes back to being nice, right? Like so many people are like, well, no, you did great because they want to be nice, not kind. And he really puts them in the position of like, no, I really want to know what could I have done better?
Yep.
And I've tried to do that. Nathan will always ask me at the end of this, he'll say, how do you think that went? And we'll debrief.
Yep.
And I try, and I don't always get it right, to go, okay, what did I need to do differently? Or I'll tell him, I felt like I didn't do this well.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, let's keep going into that. Like, how do we get good at asking for feedback? Because that's also going to put us in a, uncomfortable, potentially awkward situation.
Yeah. I think the best way, and it's kind of same, the best way to learn how to ask for feedback is to ask for feedback. And there's a couple things to keep in mind ahead of that, right? So I actually prefer asking for feedback as opposed to waiting for it. And the reason why is because you kind of get to dictate the terms, right? You get to pick like, okay, I'm feeling good today. I'm ready for this. I had my coffee. I'm ready to hear the things. And then also, of course, coming from a place of genuinely wanting to learn, much like you were describing with Adam Grant.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just asking this because I want you to give me a smiley face and an A+. I'm asking this because I want to improve. for myself, and from a leadership perspective, I want to improve for how I'm managing and how I'm running my company.
Yeah, being nice is like for the Google review. Like leave
Yes.
it, yeah, put it there. But like I
Right.
want your kindness. I really
Right.
want to know.
Yeah.
All right, so my friend Emily, which is how we met,
Yeah.
she has this saying when she's with somebody who seemingly is giving feedback, and maybe it's not. It's either it's something else. And she says she'll ask, "Is this feedback or frustration?" How do you feel about that question? Like, can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a trend that I see a lot with leaders is a team member will come into their office and just blah, 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 right, and just say, here's my problem. And rather than asking the question of like, okay, are we venting or are we problem solving, which is very similar to Emily's question.
Yeah.
That leader will like jump in and like want to take over the problem, and then what happens is the team member doesn't feel heard, right? And then it just, something that could have been a super easy conversation kind of goes sideways. So I actually really like that approach, and I like the question. What was hers? How did she
Feedback
say it?
or frustration?
Feedback or frustration, or are we venting or are we problem solving?
Yeah.
And just knowing that context up front and letting the other person, because maybe they're not even sure until you pose that question.
And I know there's been some research or some studies done around this idea of venting and how it just puts you in a feedback loop and you don't actually feel better or get better. So maybe even it's a coaching moment for your teammate to say like, hey, let's vent about this, but then let's move
Yes.
forward,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so where are we at on that? And I don't know, Stephanie, has that come up in any, sorry to put you on the spot, like that idea of like just continuously venting about something but never doing anything about it? Is that, have you seen any of that, or, yeah, we need the mic. And by the way, thanks for being awesome and answering this question, for being on the spot.
I think you're like in the same zone as like trauma dumping,
Oh.
where you're just constantly dumping information, constantly dumping your venting. And so, yeah, it becomes a cycle of, hey, I don't respect your boundary of anything. I'm not respecting your boundaries of like, okay, I'm not absorbing this. It's, I'm just going to come to dump on you. And you become a trash bin, a dumping ground for someone. So it's not just in the workplace, it's in trauma, it's, across the board. It becomes a dump
Okay, so
ground.
that's a situation. We're doing this, we're practicing all the things that you're doing, and maybe we've stepped into this situation where we just continuously get frustration, and maybe the same level of frustration or the same kind of frustration from the same team member. How do we coach them past that?
So I'll answer in story. So a manager that I used to work with, I remember going to his office one time and I was pissed because it doesn't even really matter. Somebody had talked to me in a way that I didn't appreciate, whatever, and I was just mad. So I go into my manager's office and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And he asked, okay, are you venting? Are we problem solving? And I go, well, I'm venting. And I get done and he said, Brandy, here's what you need to know. And he told me some hard truths. He said, this person, and I'm not suggesting that this is right, but the point of the story is he told me the truth and set me up with some boundaries, because what he said was, the person that you're complaining about who's talking to you this way is not going to change. And you have to decide how you're going to respond to it. And I'm like, okay. And so we didn't have a habit of like, I'm just going to come into your office 7 times a day and just dump all over you, because he put some boundaries in place.
Yeah.
He kind of ended those conversations with, okay, cool, here's what you need to keep in mind. You being emotionally hijacked is not going to.
Yeah.
So
get
I
in
want to
there.
take that a step further. And with social media, we dump information a lot. So how do you see that crossing into the workspace and into the workforce of this entire generation of people who are brought up with, I'm just going to tell you everything, and I'm just going to drop all of this information, and it might not be professional, it might not be eloquent, it might not be filtered in any sort of way,
Yeah.
and they just vomit information.
Yeah. So we talk a lot with teams about creating team norms, because there is this a lot of conversation around like authenticity and vulnerability,
Yeah.
but where's the line,
Yeah.
right? So that's something that we encourage teams to talk about in their team norms. Like, I don't need to know all the intimate details of you and your partner's relationship. I mean, we want to have a good relationship in the workplace, but that doesn't need to be a part of it. We don't need to like spill our guts on all of the things we feel about politically. That's maybe as a team norm, not something that's appropriate. So I think having that conversation and coming to agreement on what those norms are within your team is really helpful.
Yeah, it's shocking how many, you talked about the school district and how they've just settled into this groove of like, it's important that there aren't waves and we're all in agreement and everybody's okay with everything, but we don't really address those up front. Like, maybe we have our values statement, but we don't really have like, these are the cultural norms that we subscribe to.
Yes.
Okay, so this might be the last thing, but like, if we wanted to do that as a way to create this environment where we're doing all the things you've talked about, how would we set those cultural norms? How would we go about establishing that with our team?
You call me.
Nice.
I mean, that this is a lot of the work that we do,
Yeah.
but I recommend bringing in a facilitator to ask questions. It's so hard sometimes when you're in it
Yeah.
to see like values are easy to establish outward facing because they're pretty oftentimes, right? They're pretty words. And a lot of times they're not necessarily representative. If you
Right.
can bring in a facilitator to help you ask deeper questions and to really also talk not just about values, but behaviors as well. Because you can say anything, but those behaviors, like if we say we value collaboration, cool. How does that show up? And let's talk about that. And let's build in some things to affirm those behaviors.
Yeah. I think the idea of creating those values, but then what you just said, okay, but how does this actually play out?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, we're ethical. Okay, but how does that actually, right?
Right.
Like, we communicate well. Okay, how does that actually play
Yes.
out? What does that
Yeah.
mean? What does that look like? All right, if anybody has one more, we'll wrap up. Oh, it looks like somebody does. Yeah, Lauren, all right, jump in there.
Well, you had it first.
Okay.
My question was that when you talk about different challenges in work environment and staff have, and they come to the manager, and how about a situation that two of the staff have come from different background, from different countries or state, and then they have issues in regarding understanding each other in terms of communication, and presumably you're the manager, and they both come to you to say, hey, this is not working out, I'm not changing this, and then another one is also not changing. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to find middle ground or to find like, okay, so we know we can't agree on this. What can we agree on?
Sort of like, we all agree that we want this company to succeed.
Right.
So then how to,
Yeah.
find that,
Yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah.
All right. Lauren, do you want to, you can do it.
Just kind of to wrap around what you were saying, Stephanie, and then I think, Angela, what you said earlier as well is thinking about how, with all of us now inundated with social media, one of the things that I'm really doubling down on is analog, getting in front of humans.
Yes.
Because when you think about giving hard feedback to someone, which is what we've kind of been talking about today, at least one thing, the context matters so much.
Yeah.
I.e., what's the context of our relationship? And
Yes.
so when you think about social media and everything's mitigated through a screen, and then I see that with a coworker, then I'm actually seeing the coworker in my environment where I'm working, having routine check-ins with each other to where I
Yes.
see body language, I start to understand what you're doing here, because
Yeah.
that's most of our communication. And so doubling down on getting in front of people matters. So even as we embrace all this great technology, when we think about feedback, having an authentic relationship, which can
Yes.
only happen over time and repeated interactions, is important. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
there you go.
I think that's such an important point, Lauren. And I think the more, like in my house, we joke about Alexa because I don't know if you guys have noticed with the most recent upgrade or whatever, her voice is different. She sounds like your buddy. And I get super annoyed. She's like this last word Larry now, right? Like, hey, Alexa, what's the weather? She gives the weather. Thanks. You're welcome. Have a great day. I'm like, oh my God, you're not my friend. You're a tool. And I guess where I'm going with that is the more that we are using technology in our lives and the more it's integrated, the more, to Lauren's point, those face-to-face interactions are really
I like
important.
that he
to
called
make
it
matter.
analog. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Dean. Now,
Can I squeeze in the last one?
Yep.
Because it kind of comes off of what you were just talking about. My question has been the AI tools that are now available
Yeah.
to us. what's your opinion of those in, doing this role playing, this practicing? Because I know a lot of them are some of them are geared towards that specifically.
Yeah.
Role play this hard conversation using an AI tool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really helpful, and I'm sure there's some people in the room who have had some of these conversations with AI, and I will tell you, I haven't necessarily had those conversations with AI, but I pull out scenarios from AI all the time to use. So I think as long as you're actually practicing and you're saying the words and you're being honest with yourself, whatever that looks like, do it.
I'll add on to that just be really clear with AI what your intent is.
Yes.
I've had to train mine to not lie to me because it will pretend it knows things that it doesn't know to satisfy the query.
Yes.
So if you're like, hey, I want to role play with you, but here are the requirements of this
Yeah.
role play, I think you're going to get a better experience.
100%.
And I'm by no means an expert on AI, but that's just what I learned. All right, round of applause for Brandy because that was amazing.
Thank you.
It was so good.